Hello, and welcome to Wrestling with Poetry, Kalamazoo, Michigan's premier wrestling and poetry podcast. My name is Ish Klein, and welcome to our final episode of the series. Episode 33 features Tom Raworth's poem, Beautiful Habit, and a poem that I wrote in response. Also in this episode, I'll talk about the phenomenon of Phantom Champions in wrestling. I'm also going to pay tribute to 4 women who were Phantom Champions. First, let's start with Tom Raworth. Writer, artist, teacher, and publisher Tom Raworth was born in South London. He was a founder of Matrix Press and co-founder of Goliard Press. Raworth's own work has been identified with the Black Mountain School. He has written over 40 collections of poetry.
Beautiful Habit, for Ed and Jenny. Greetings as the door opened, ticking. Please listen to this. Food alone for all. The F.B.I. will continue. Maybe you dozed off. I hung by that phone all night. Suppose he talks. Vida, later, aria. Once upon a time, not looking for anything. You're on, your own. It's off, it's on. Perhaps it means ragged like that gold at my year premiere. And pour the old box down a drain. Too much news, said the news. Re-oh. It's us or rust, listener. Deep, personal regret, looking up Monday. We can save your head or your body, we can shave. Even his admission is a subtle lie. In suspense, what is cut into the smallest of the grinding to fill a prescription. Drum to the wobble and a roll on the sea come to mind an article of light distance through distance unfinished. Piano. Willing to believe. National anthem hearer. Perfect rhyme to some, all cars kept indoors. Sophisticated newsmen show how it could have been. Retreat from the Swiss legation. Numbers for an event. Corruption, why not? Infinite detail is no more real. Thought against power. Answer it. Hooked to just another piece of tape. Hooked to just one more little piece of tape. Threw words into no record. Writer, writer, writer. Am I on replay? All you do is expand the system. A Polaroid of La with the wrong voice print. Astronaut amazed at what was expected.
Thank you, Tom. That was beautiful. This is the poem that I wrote, inspired by Tom Raworth's poem. It's called the F.B.I. Or, still laughing, I told him I used to be a misogynist. Now I am a dry addict. I shouldn't have used the word I. He asked how dry. Then it was said very, 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 so very it's boring. But the screw or the suit or the goon cried out loud, no, damn it, the relevant poison. And you told him, I don't know, and I told him I didn't know nothin'. Wasn't a certain drain cleaner mentioned? Is it too late to keep I out of this? Do you know this woman? Look very closely. Yeah, well, maybe the mouth a little. Do you know what they're planning to do? You want me to say something about a bomb in a convention center, but this one here, point towards your sternum, is not about burning any nerve endings or blowing out the city's eardrums, which are my eardrums too. They will mention the flaming companions. They'll mention infirmity graphically, and you will stay chilly. Ice, 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 as many times as you like. The room was the room I lives in, or lived in, until the extractions. There was a period of photos. Someone didn't want someone else to have them. Sublimed into a deft progression of notes on the trumpet. It was said by the mouth in question, let's call them the tertiary mouth, because we know the third sex has its own mouth. Oh, buddy, does it ever. Lionel, are you taking this down? Boss, my name ain't that, but yeah, I'm getting it. This is him. He's on probation. What that means to you is we don't know if he's naturally likely to be protocol compliant vis-a-vis questioning. Is anyone ever going to loosen these straps? The distant subject asked, and the agent to this lit a cigarette and said that if he loosened them, your, meaning my, eyes would literally drip out of my head. He's not a smoker. He lit it so it would smolder. An interval. He said he's got all the time in the world. You know what that means, don't you? No, I don't. I mean, for this sternum in custody, this pile on the chair. No chance for sunlight, no chance to freely walk. There was foreshadowing to this. One relates, one says quite clearly, every one of you, everyone in this and the other room, you'll see, if I burn, it'll be the end. You'll burn too. The whole world. What'd they say to that? I think the sound I heard was them laughing. And now onto the topic of Phantom Champions. In the deep past, when a national champion would go to a new territory or another country, they might lose the belt in a match when they would first arrive in the area, and they'd fully expect to win it back by the end of their stint. Because there was no internet, many people would never know that for at least a certain amount of time, the champion position was held by a different wrestler. The people who are not officially recognized as champions, but who are in fact champions, are considered ghost champions or phantom champions. Today I want to pay tribute to the women of wrestling who beat the so-called fabulous Moolah and were, for at least a little while, world champions. The first woman to win the belt off of Moolah was Betty Boucher. This was the only belt that Betty ever had, and it was not widely acknowledged. Boucher befriended Pat Patterson, who referred her to Moolah, and Moolah trained Betty. Even though Boucher is a very short woman, only 5 feet tall, she became a very, very good wrestler. Boucher beat Moolah for the title September 17, 1966, in Seattle, Washington, before dropping the belt less than a month later. Boucher's last recorded match would be against Moolah in 1969, and Betty would then retire in 1970 to start a family. The next woman to win the belt off Moolah was Yukiko Tomo. She's the only woman to have not been trained by Moolah herself. She was Japanese. What we know is that she won the title March 10th, 1968, and lost it April 2nd, 1968. This was in Japan. She is in the All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. The next ghost champion would not appear until 1975. This was Sue Green. And Sue Green started early. She had to get permission from her state governor to become a pro wrestler. She was 15 when she did that. So she was very motivated very early on. And she would go on to compete in the second ever women's match at Madison Square Garden. Although Moolah gave Green many opportunities in her wrestling career, Green was originally trained by Joe Blanchard, father of Tully Blanchard, a famous wrestler. Green won the PWI, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Girl Wrestler of the Year award in 1976. Green beat Moolah twice for the belt. The first time was a pretty standard ghost title reign that was booked by Fritz von Erich. The more interesting one came after the WWF when things got real. On February 2nd, 1976, Moolah struck Green in the face just before a match. Not wanting to take this abuse, Green fought back and put Moolah into a legitimate submission hold, leaving her with no choice but to tap out. Because this was a shoot match or an unscripted match, Vince McMahon Sr. refused to give Green the belt. But for a brief few minutes, Moolah was defeated. Green is now an on-stage figure, no longer wrestles. Not surprising, since she started so early. The fourth Phantom Champion is Evelyn Stevens, who began as one of Moolah's wrestlers, but after getting sick of Moolah and all her BS, she left and became an independent wrestler. And she was one of the most successful women at the time. Evelyn Stevens won the title on October 8, 1978, but had it for only 2 days. Nonetheless, she is one of the few women who boast of pinning the fabulous Moolah cleanly and holding her championship title. Moolah never acknowledged Evelyn Stevens' title win when speaking about her decade-spanning championship reign. And neither did she recognize the previous 3 women she dropped the title to: Betty Boucher, Yukika Tomoa in Japan in 1968, and Sue Tex Green on February 2nd, 1976, who got Moolah to scream, "I quit," by placing Moolah in an Indian deathlock. That's right, yeah, the fabulous, so-called fabulous Moolah. Man, what a jerk. She died in 2007, and I'm fine with that. Meanwhile, Evelyn Stevens, Betty Boucher, Sue Green, and Yukiko Tomo are all still alive, and I salute each of you. Your lives have enriched us all. So I leaned on the following sources for this article. The one by Justin Cummings called The 4 Ghost Women of Wrestling, that's eWrestling News editorial. And the Wikipedias for Betty Boucher, Sue Green, and Yukiko. Then there's www.cagematch.net. There's a Reddit thread, The Squared Circle, Days of Women Wrestling Trailblazers. Also ProWrestlingStories.com, Pro Wrestling Stories, Evelyn Stevens Wrestling Murderer. That's right, Evelyn Stevens, a little bit sad. She shot her husband in the face, which kind of ended her wrestling career for at least 5 years because she went to jail. Events: Independence Pro Wrestling, IPW presents Duel of the Fates, live pro wrestling in Lansing, Michigan. This will be Saturday, May 4th, May the 4th, at 7 p.m. at Royal Scott Golf and Bowl in Lansing, Michigan. Additionally, on May 5th, Independence Pro Wrestling will be in Ann Arbor, Michigan for their Cinco de Mayo event, which begins at 6 p.m., and that'll be at Holmes Brewery on the campus of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Poetry events. Now, on May 18th, there's a thing called the Timid Poet Open Mic Night, and this is at Phoenix Community Church, which is at 2208 Winchell Avenue. That's in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49008. The doors are going to open at 6:30 p.m., and the sharing starts at 7 p.m. That'll give you time to work out what you want to read, because it doesn't happen until May 18th, 2024. So get your nerve up in the interval. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful summer.